Hello and welcome to 2024 Atlanta Falcons team preview. Kirk Cousins, new QB1 in town. Hopefully that Achilles is healed up just fine. Will this be the year that Bijan Robinson is finally getting the workload that all of his fantasy managers desire? Drake London, Kyle Pitts, could they all break out as well? Plenty to talk about here in the next 30 minutes. Strap in. Let's get after it. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. Welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. And joining me, as always, Fantasy Life Director of Analytics and all-around rock star, Dwain The Rock McFarland. And Dwain, this is a team that's gone 7-10 3 straight seasons. I mean, only the Jets, Commanders, and Broncos have longer active streaks without a winning season than the Falcons. But Kirk Cousins is here. How confident are you that the Falcons are getting a quarterback that's ready to really elevate the entire offense and accordingly, maybe the entire team?
I mean, look, we have to worry about the Achilles injury, but all we can do is trust really the doctors and the team telling us where the player is. It sounds like Kirk Cousins is fine. He's in a good spot. So as long as that's okay, I think, we are getting someone that is going to be a massive upgrade. Now, the floor before was terrible, Ian. We had Marcus Mariota. We had Desmond Ridder. We had Taylor Heineke out there for stretches. This was one of the bottom 4 passing units in the NFL over the last 3 seasons, and it has been a major drag on all the offensive weapons. So Kirk Cousins, when I look at him coming into this offense that's got this weapons, you get the new coordinator and Zach Robinson coming over from the Rams. I think there's so much to be excited about here. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Kirk Cousins is a low-end QB1 this season, even though he's that prototypical pocket passer that we need to get lucky on. They need to kind of hit the lottery on their touchdowns per pass attempt, things like that. We need some efficiency. But look, this is a dude that's thrown for, over 270 yards per game over the last 3 seasons. So anytime you've got a number like that, you've got my attention. And if the touchdowns go right for you, you're going to have a chance to surprise in fantasy football.
Kirk Cousins, the reigning QB7 in fantasy points per game, only did it in 8 games. But my God, man, we're talking about a guy that, again, was less than 0.1 fantasy points away from outperforming Jordan Love, who certainly is going quite a bit higher in fantasy drafts. So not a given. We're getting the best version of Kirk. Again, does turn 36 in August and coming off a right torn Achilles. Rodgers was the left. And again, Dan Marino, someone that's really talked about the difficulties of coming back from one on your right, because again, that is you're pushing off your plant, your power foot if you are in the quarterback business. But yeah, man, I mean, this really was like one of the best versions of Kirk we saw last year. I'm just concerned, Dwain, because let's face it, not like we've seen that version of Kirk every year of his career. I mean, again, EPA per drop back, he was 6th last year, but the 5 years before that, 19th, 10th, 7th, and 29th. So I agree with you. I would like to think that the supporting cast, which I mentioned my rating before, PFF, rushing, receiving, pass blocking, run blocking grades, has ranked 1st and 9th over the past 2 years. I mean, offensive line reigning top 5 group per PFF. They return all their starters. Hell, I mean, we'll talk about it more in a little bit, but I even think Zach Robinson will probably run a similar system as fellow, Sean McVay disciple Kevin O'Connell. So yeah, again, good reasons for optimism, but again, just wouldn't totally be betting on, Cousins to go ahead and turn to his top 10 QB because we do have some red flags. That said, Dwain, we don't have to bet on him being a top 10 QB because he is priced really freaking low at the moment.
He's been one. I can throw all the EPA stuff out the window. I get it for the real quarterback analysis. But for fantasy, I mean, if you look at him in points per game, he's been 10th, 11th, 17th, 11th, 5th. I mean, 19.5, 20, 17, 18.7, 18.8, 19.9. This, I think the biggest risk is, does he hit an age cliff with the injury? But otherwise, if that's okay, I feel really great about him. And I get those other underlying data points, but this is a quarterback that's shown he can produce in fantasy football, which last time I checked, that's the game we're playing.
You are correct, Dwain. My real life nonsense doesn't always hold as much weight here, but okay.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It is, and it's relevant to football. I'm just saying on the fantasy side.
Long story short, Kirk Cousins right now, pick 155 in current ESPN ADP, and that's actually pretty consistent around the industry, going right alongside Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers, usually around there. On ESPN, I'm seeing Trevor Lawrence right next to Kirk. I would take T-Law ahead of him, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to change a bit as we get closer to August. But just in terms of, again, Dwain, these more stationary veteran pocket passers, I'm not even talking Tua or Purdy because they really have the offenses we're feeling good about. We expect them to go earlier. But between Kirk, Stafford, Rodgers, and Baker, we'll say, throw Goff in there as well. Who are you prioritizing?
Well, Goff, because he hasn't been injured and he's kind of the same thing. But outside of that, I'm taking Kirk over all those guys. Just too proven. And man, I love the weapons. I'm not gonna spoil it because we're about to get into them. But this is a potentially loaded freaking offense.
Looking at our Fantasy Life consensus rankings, I do have Kirk Cousins as my QB 20. Dwain is at QB 17. So a little more optimistic than me, but certainly
ADP is what's pulling him down. If I just had to pure rank Kirk Cousins, I would have him a little bit higher than that. But I want to respect the fact that we've got better ADP data than we've ever had. And we want to help people apply that to their fantasy home leagues and use that market leverage. But if I just had to, if it was the olden days and we didn't have that information to help us and get a gauge of the market, my guess is I'd probably have him more like 15 or 14.
Certainly someone that, again, maybe isn't going to be your first quarterback off the board. I'd hope not. Again, we got some ballers over there.
You could live with it.
10, but you could live with it.
If you're loaded.
That's the tier, man. Like if you miss out on a quarterback early, you cannot leave that tier without your guy, especially again, when we do have an offense led by a wide receiver 1 in Drake London, who we were expecting big things from ahead of year 3. So he's flashed plenty, man. I mean, the contested catches highlights are incredible. We got the Falcons pulling out, that overhead camera that only they seem to really use in their highlight reels, but it's awesome. That said, man, just a wide receiver 48 in PPR points per game during the first 2 seasons of his career. So do you think there's any chance London, Dwain, is a trap at his current top 10 on certain sites ADP, or is he someone that we're all in a similar manner as one Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, and so this is where the nuance of really working through these players comes in. And London was a guy that I had a ton of fun doing the research for on the wide receiver tiers, which are up over on FantasyLife.com. You guys can get them all for free. I challenge you to find a better breakdown of wide receivers and all the things that go into this. But when you look at Drake London on the surface, the number one thing that translates to fantasy points the following season is what? Their points the previous season. And on that front, he's bad. I mean, he's been a wide receiver 4, averaging 10.7 fantasy points per game. That's really bad, and it's a major red flag. But again, the quarterback play was absolutely in the tank, atrocious. Only the Giants, Titans, Panthers, and Bears average fewer passing yards per game than the Falcons. Now, look, there's some chicken or the egg because the receiver is a part of that. But let's talk about a guy that wasn't even able to get on the field all the time because freaking Arthur Smith thought he was good enough to spend a top 10 draft pick on him. But no, let's just keep it in an 80% route participation. Guys, elite wide receivers, good wide receivers, they're on the field 90% of the routes. For some reason, you got to get Kaderil Hodge out there. Got to give Van Jefferson a little bit of run. I mean, look, what are we doing? Those are the things that drove me crazy about Arthur Smith. Not necessarily a bad play caller, but the way he handled his personnel, in my opinion, was absolutely bizarro. When we look underneath all that, Ian, at the other talent data points that we want, and this is what can help you. When you see, okay, wide receiver 4 doesn't look good, but what did his talent say? A 1.95 yards per route run, that's wide receiver 2 worthy. If you adjust that for his quarterback play, he would have been almost in the mid-2s. Quarterback play impacts yards per route run, guys. You got to be able to think about how you adjust for that. So really, Drake London has already shown us he's a wide receiver 1, 25% target share. That's a high-end wide receiver 2. So when you combine it all together, I think more than likely he's going to be a wide receiver 1. If you want to be conservative about it, let's call him a borderline wide receiver 1. Now he gets a massive upgrade at quarterback. I can argue this, Ian. Did any wide receiver this offseason run more pure than Drake London? You had Kirk Cousins. You get rid of Arthur Smith and his dumbass not running you out on the field. And then you get Zach Robinson coming over from the Rams. We're going to see more motion. We're going to see this guy moved all over the formation. We're going to get more play action. You're going to potentially just have everything in a better state for Drake London. And so this year, I have this passing offense projected for a 70-yard per game improvement. Okay? Over the last decade, other wide receivers that have seen that when they were in their prime, which Drake London is entering. Eric Decker, remember that when you got that guy named Peyton Manning? Went from 9.6 fantasy points per game to 16.8. That's 7.3. T.Y. Hilton. We had Andrew Luck hurt, had to go with Jacoby Brissett. Andrew Luck comes back, went from 11.1 fantasy points per game to 17.1. Devontae Adams went from 15.9 a year that Aaron Rodgers was injured midway through the season up to 21.8 the following year. Stephon Diggs, when he took his talents over to the Buffalo Bills, jumped to 20.5. So, look, man, when I look at all that, I add it up. I think Drake London is going to be the most improved wide receiver in all of fantasy football, and I want to draft him as such.
Also, it just helps that Kirk Cousins, wide receiver 1, Yeah, really freaking good consistently over the years. I mean, ever since he did join the Vikings, 2018, Adam Thielen was the wide receiver 7. 2019, Diggs was only the wide receiver 25, but that was a wonky run first year, and Diggs did that only 94 targets throughout the entire year. Justin Jefferson, since then, wide receiver 9, 4, 2, and 5. So again, not saying that London is necessarily Justin Jefferson or even Stephon Diggs good, but I do think he could be, again, approaching that realm. And yeah, Dwain, accordingly, you have him as only one of 11 wide receivers projecting to see 135 or more targets. So, and some of these best ball streets guys, like, they are well aware of this. We are seeing Drake London go off the board, pick 14.5, like legit a borderline round 1, round 2. But guess what? We're in redraft mode, and over at ESPN, pick 35. Like, I think sometimes, Dwain, people overstate, just how bad some of this ADP is. But when you see a price like that, I mean, yes, oh my God, give me London over Diggs, Evans, Michael Pittman, Chris Olave, who are all going a bit ahead of him. Yeah, one of the easiest buys at the end of round 3 in all of fantasy right now at ESPN.
Yeah. And I mean, great call out when people hear us talk about the best ball ADP, even if you don't play best ball, we advise you to. Like, it's fun. But we can use this market data. There have been thousands and thousands and thousands of drafts by people putting money on it, and they're very invested in trying to get this stuff right. So we actually have a marketplace where prices have been thrown out there. They started at a certain place, and prices have either gone up or they've gone down. So think about it. If you bet a line at the beginning of the week and you think it's a mispriced line, and you're like, oh, I'm going to take the under, on 3.5, right? And then the line moves to 7.5. You had a really bad bet. You're like, oh my God, what did I do? You're not just going to keep betting it. It's the same kind of thing whenever we get to see this ADP stuff in best ball. And what we want to do is translate that into, okay, now how do you turn that into an edge in your home league? And when you look at a guy like Drake London, while he might not go quite as low, like Ian said, sometimes the ADP isn't as sharp over there. There haven't been as many drafts, but right now it's pretty much based off of their rankers and projections. So when you start drafting, that's going to be the main thing people are seeing in their queue. And Drake London is a name that you want to make sure that you don't leave too far down your queue when you're getting down to that 2-3 turn. Like, I would absolutely be prioritizing him if he's making it that far.
Again, guys, I'm looking at all those ADPs really clean, right next to each other over at FantasyLife.com with our ADP tool. But we have more than a few other very cool tools and a bunch of new stuff with our launch of FantasyLife Plus. And we'd love for you guys just to listen to the one, the only Matthew Berry real quick for a quick word on everything that FantasyLife Plus has to offer.
When I started Fantasy Life, I had one mission in mind, really just one: fantasy football and sports betting for all. And what started out as just a newsletter has now grown into a full-fledged media company. And here I am to tell you we're ready to evolve yet again. I'm introducing Fantasy Life Plus. It's a premium product built upon a suite of fantasy and sports betting tools to take your game to the next level. I know, I hear you, really, Barry, a premium product? Okay, I understand, but get this. Our mission has not changed, right? Our newsletter will forever remain free. All of our expert analysis, free. And we will still provide sets of fantasy football rankings for free. Everything you need to be a great fantasy football manager, you will still be able to do for free at FantasyLife.com. But hey, if you really want to level up, then Fantasy Life Plus is for you. Fantasy Life Plus will introduce new tools like our Draft Champion, customizable rankings, site-wide league sync integration, player prop models, game models, DFS pick'em builders, and so much more. Seriously, just check it out. Go to FantasyLife.com to learn more. And as always, may your trades never be vetoed, may your flex plays always work out, and may your Monday Night Miracles always come through.
Great stuff there. All right, Dwain, look, Drake London, the number 1 in Atlanta. I think we can all agree on that. But the number 2 is not expected to be Darnell Mooney or Rondale Moore. Rather, year 4 now, tight end Kyle Pitts. Yes, last year did not go great. Also, yes, we have now verifiable info that it was mostly injury related. I mean, he also had surgery on the PCL in addition to the MCL, which just was not reported correctly at the time. Falcons GM Terry Fontenot confirmed this offseason that, again, Pitts was fighting through the issue all year. Good, man, because otherwise I don't know how we could really have explained some of the drop-offs we saw. Over a 2 yards per route run in year 1, 1.69 in year 2, just 1.43 4.43 in year 3. There are some damning stats out there, Dwain, that I've dug up. So I'm just going to list a few of them real quick. Jimmy Graham has more touchdowns than Kyle Pitts since 2021. So does Tommy Tremble, our boy. Zach Ertz has just one less missed tackle force than Pitts on 7 fewer receptions over the past 2 seasons. That's not great. And among 35 qualified tight ends, Pitts has the worst targeted passer rating since 2021. So that sucks. But Dwain, what were the issues last year? Injury. Well, okay, he's healthy now. Fully good offseason. Doctors, Dr. Jeff Mueller, we're expecting Pitts to be back to 100%. Okay, cool. Quarterback play, horrific with Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota over these last 2 seasons. Now we got Kirk Cousins. Already talked about him. That's great. And yeah, legit target competition at tight end last year with Jonnu Smith. Honestly, being the better yak beast, with a lot of those design plays, he's gone. He's in Miami. So as much as I would sit here, Dwain, and probably be fading Kyle Pitts as a top 6 option at the position, I think his 3 red flags have all turned green in this offseason. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. And that's why, you got to really understand the context. It matters when you look at these players and you see that yards per route run going down. You got to understand the injury. You got to understand how bad the quarterback play was. That absolutely impacts a player's yards per route run. The other thing with yak and all these things, the injury is part of it. But as ADOT goes up, yak comes down. And in the 2 years before that, in the healthy games, we saw Kyle Pitts, despite being one of the highest ADOT players at tight end, 11.2 and 13.7, still had 4.7 and 4.8 yards after the catch. So showing that he was a guy that could stretch the field. And also, once he got the ball in his hands, still do damage. You know how many tight ends can actually do those 2 things together? Hardly any. Kyle Pitts might be the one when you think about the way he gets used. Go watch film of Trey McBride, guys. I'm not trying to knock him. I love him. But you know how many of those plays are just little leaks out into the flat? I mean, and Kyler Murray just knows no one's else going to be open, and he's just chunking it to Trey McBride. Kyle Pitts is actually working downfield. He's trying to earn these targets in the seam. He's running corner routes, flag routes, all these different things that you don't see a lot of tight ends have to do. So I think getting a quarterback, you have to have an accurate quarterback to help make those things work. What's the thing he did not have for the last couple of years? It's that. And so once I think you put it all into context and you bring it all back together, I think there's an absolute huge ceiling here for Kyle Pitts. I don't want to go overboard with it because I don't want everyone showing up in my DMs telling me how much they hate me and I'm an idiot because I went back to Kyle Pitts again. But I'm going back to Kyle Pitts again because we talked about Drake London. Did anyone run more pure at the wide receiver position? You can make the same argument for Kyle Pitts.
Honestly, I think Kyle Pitts is maybe the only answer to what pass catcher ran more pure than Drake London. It's still in his offense. So remember, people, still doesn't turn 24 until October, has a 1,000-yard season under his belt. I mean, God only makes so many humans that are 6'6", 245 with sub 4.5 speed. So
Kyle Pitts in the Cooper Kupp role. Who says no?
That's Rondale Moore, Dwain. Take it easy there. Every slot wide, it's like every white guy's Ben Affleck. Every slot wide receiver is Cooper Kupp. That's just how it works in fantasy football. But yeah, 1 of 7 tight ends that FantasyLife projects for 100+ targets. I've been fine buying Kyle Pitts as the tight end 6 on a lot of sites. I'm playing, but guess what, guys? You don't even have to make that big of a leap of faith. Currently, the tight end 8 over at ESPN, pick 75. My man is going almost around after Evan Ingram. So at that price point, Dwain, I could not be more in on Kyle Pitts. What can go wrong? All right, guys, before we keep on keeping on, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hey, Fantasy Life fans, let me ask you a question. Was your day hard enough for a Mike's Hard Lemonade? Are you in a slow draft that just won't end? Actually, yes, my Scott Fish Bowl was brutal. I was on the clock, guys, for 6 straight hours without the 101 going. But lo and behold, we have moved on. Were you 1 pick away from the perfect quarterback wide receiver stack, but got sniped? That's also happened to me fairly often recently. Hate it. Living the fantasy life is hard, as you can see, and Mike's Hard Lemonade is a reward for a hard-earned thirst. Reward yourself today. You can go to www.mikeshard.com to find out where you can get Mike's nearest you. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. All right, Dwain, mentioned it briefly, but new coaching staff in Atlanta, Arthur Smith, the bane of most fantasy managers' existence, is gone, and is Raheem Morris. Didn't have, the best career as a head coach with the Bucs and even the Falcons over the years, but certainly did good things with that Rams defense. Of course, though, he will be handing off the reins to Zach Robinson to make this offense tick. Spent the last 5 years with Sean McVay and worked his way up to pass game coordinator and QB coach. So, hey, man, we've seen Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, actually several of McVay's, disciples, if you will, go on and do some pretty good things in future offenses. Are you buying Robinson as the next wonder kid here? Because again, based on everything around here, we don't even need Kirk Cousins to be this top 5 quarterback, man. If he can just be 90% of the guy we've seen over the years, this looks like an above average to borderline great offense.
Yeah, I think this is like a huge thing as far as what we might get, because we've seen Sean McVay really handle those cheat codes. Yes, Cooper Kupp's really good, but Sean McVay is also a mastermind at keeping Cooper Kupp in advantageous situations through motion, lining him up in the slot. Just doing things you would just think like a normal human being would do. It'd be like, hey, I got this really good thing in my life, and if I use it this certain way, like my life gets better. Well, that's what I think you're going to get right now from Zach Robinson. So whenever you look at the motion plays for the Rams last season, they ranked 3rd in the NFL at 68%, whereas you had the Falcons much further down the list. So I think those are all going to be potential cheat codes to get opened up. I think you're also going to be a little less run heavy. I think there's still going to be a balanced offense. We're going back to that Madden playbook. I would call this a pass balanced offense. I don't think they're going to drop back to pass quite as much as you saw with Kirk Cousins in some of those years in Minnesota. I expect that to take a little bit of a step down, but I think we could see some major efficiency boosts for the players around Kirk Cousins based on this scheme.
Dwain takes us to our Falcons win total. 9.5 minus 140 juice on the over. I'm feeling like it might be a little bit different here. Again, betting markets telling us that most people are indeed taking the over, but I am taking the under. I am just a little bit afraid of teams in general that are making so much noise in the free agency period. And it wasn't just Kirk Cousins, man. It's giving, in my opinion, a very regular wide receiver, Darnell Mooney, $26 million guaranteed. And it's entrusting, again, such a veteran at this point quarterback coming off a devastating injury that we were just hoping is going to bring him back to something close to normal. So, hey, at least they used number 8 overall pick on a ready year 1 contributor. Oh, no, wait, they drafted a backup freaking quarterback. So this doesn't seem like an organization. I mean, for Bill Belichick to go to Atlanta and seemingly just, we don't know the inner workings. We don't know if he was offered anything, but to me, this entire organization is looking like a bit of a red flag. And yes, Arthur Smith is gone, but I'm not willing. To me, the bigger problems there were, again, far more to do with the guys under center, more so than the guy calling the plays. And as much as Cousins, even banged up, is an upgrade there, man. More competitive division. And I don't know if this is a 10-win team. I don't think they're going to be trash, man, but 10 wins for this team. We're giving Kirk Cousins a lot of benefit of the doubt that I don't think anyone has been giving him, in recent years.
So, I mean, I think the other way you can look at it, even though everybody might not agree with the Michael Penix pick, obviously it's been well documented. They had their reasons for doing it, and it has been verified that there were other teams interested in Penix, and it was going to probably be in the first half of the draft. So I get why, as more information has come out, like I think that pick is more defendable in many ways if he was your guy. I think the better option is can you please trade down and still get the guy that you want? But I think their concern was that they would trade down too far. So
they could have traded down 1 pick with the freaking Bears, though. That part's inexcusable.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But if we're taking all that off the board and not worrying about that pick, the fact is Michael Penix is still probably better than anything they've had in the last 3 years, and he's now the backup. Yeah. So we get Kirk Cousins. Let's say he fails. I think your backup is better than anything you've had. So for that reason, you can't bet it now at minus 140. But like when this line was lower and it first came out, I think 9.5 was a great line. I mean, I do think that they win over 10 games, but am I willing to take it at minus 40? No, but it obviously shows us that is the sharper side of it based on what the market has done so far.
Minus 115 favorites to win the division.
I think they win the division.
Yeah, we will see what happens. I mean, I think they deserve to be the favorites again. It's just so much. And hey, I was wrong on this last year in terms of Jared Goff. I just was like, hey, I'm looking at the overall roster. Goff, yeah, he's been good some years. He's also been really freaking average to bad some years. And guess what? We got a really great, arguably the best version of him. We'll see which version of Kirk shows up in 2024. But regardless of how you guys feel, why not head on over to DraftKings Sportsbook to go put your money where your mouth is? Maybe you're not willing to bet some NFL futures right now. That's fine because we still have plenty of other sports going on, particularly UFC Fight Night coming up this weekend. Rose Namajunas, Tracy Cortez. Also got Santiago Ponzinibbio in the co-main. I know I kind of butchered the name, but it's just hard in UFC, man. If you guys think my NFL pronunciations suck, again, this is a whole new world over here. But fight I'm really looking forward to is actually the featured fight, Drew Dober versus Gene Silva. Dober is truly allergic to a boring fight, so make sure you guys at a minimum check out that one. I do like Dober to win by TKO. So yeah, guys, again, go to DraftKings Sportsbook. All new customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. All you got to do is use promo code FantasyLife. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, not to worry. DraftKings is the one-stop shop for all things daily fantasy, where you can join in on all the fun and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, new customers can use our promo code FantasyLife and bet just $5 on any wager. Get that $150 back in bonus bets instantly. It's promo code FantasyLife only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Dwain, we've gone through, a good 24 minutes now talking about the Falcons, but barely mentioned one of many fantasy hopeful superstars here, but the guy that you need to draft at the very top of your draft if you want him. Second year RB Bijan Robinson. Wasn't bad as a rookie at all. I mean, RB 17 in PPR points per game, RB 14 if you remove the game where it only had one touch and he was basically emergency only because of the illness. But, when you drafted him in the first round of your draft, there certainly weren't the results you were hoping for. So how confident are you that he's actually going to get, again, that true workhorse role that his talents deserve in the year 2024?
Well, look, running backs, predicting their workload is the most difficult thing on the planet because every coach is a little bit different. Some
tougher than being a doctor, tougher than anything.
Yes,
it's predicting.
It's tougher. If you want to be an astrophysicist, go for it because that is an easier job than trying to predict workload and usage year over year based on coaching changes. It can be really tough. But what we know about Bijan Robinson is they do have high-end draft capital invested in him. He is a guy that absolutely flashed on the field last year, and he can contribute in every capacity of the game. He is an elite runner. On the inside, he can get to the outside. He's a guy that can work in the passing game. So he is it's the three musketeers here. You've got Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson, and you have invested heavily in them. And I love what this team has done, moving to a more an offensive identity that's going to allow them to throw the ball more. So I think this is really good for Bijan Robinson. Tyler Allgeier's obviously not going to go completely away, but here's the thing I don't think is going to happen. 30% of the carries inside the 5 for Bijan Robinson. Come on, Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith just wanted to prove something. Arthur Smith, his dad didn't pay attention to him. Something happened in this man's life to where he's got to prove that he can win with less. Instead of just saying, I got Bijan Robinson. Took him at the 8th pick overall. Let's get him out on the field and just let him cook. I think we're going to see much more of that. Obviously, we can go back to the McVay tree and look at the history. That doesn't mean that will translate 100% over to Zach Robinson. But if it did, that would be a really good thing because McVay has shown that willingness to ride a workhorse back. And if Bijan Robinson gets 65% of the rushing attempts and he's out there for 55, 60% route participation, dude's going to be really, really hard to stop from being the RB1 overall. It would be literally him, Christian McCaffrey, and Breece Hall in a race to see who's going to be the top guy this year. And Bijan would squarely be in that conversation, man. I absolutely love taking Bijan Robinson at the middle of round 1. He's one of these guys, Ian, you look up at the end of the year and you're like, holy crap, this dude just scored 420 in a PPR league. That is in the realm of possibility for this man.
So why are some people taking Breece Hall ahead of him? Because I look at this offense and I would be shocked if Bijan is not getting over 300 carries. Meanwhile, and with the Jets, man, that's more of a coaching staff that we have seen be a bit more willing to use multiple backs, that did draft multiple backs. Now, they were day 3, but I'm just saying, I see Bijan being the 3-down workhorse in Atlanta. I would not be completely shocked if we see Braylon Allen eating into Breece Hall's goal line work.
I got Bijan RB2. I think they're the same. If you look at Breece Hall,
who are you drafting?
I have Breece Hall ahead of him. Breece Hall has shown, from a standpoint of earning targets,
from Trevor Simeon's dumbass.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Sorry,
Breece Hall's done it. Breece Hall's done it both years. So look, they're in a tier together. You want one of these two running backs in the middle of round 1, in my opinion. This is not your historical, guys, let's just fade the run. These are running backs in their prime years that can do everything. And I think trying to force it and saying which one's going to be better than the other, and I know that's what we get paid to do, I think it's kind of a silly exercise, honestly. I think they're both really good. They both are in offenses that should be much better than what they were last year, and I want to draft them in fantasy football. If the guy in front of me takes Bijan and I'm left with Breece Hall, I'm taking it. The guy in front of me takes Breece Hall and I get to have Bijan Robinson, I'm taking it. I love both players.
Is it Breece's receiving production that's making you think he's in a different stratosphere? I mean, I see Bijan.
I'm not saying different stratosphere. I'm just saying if I put it all together, his numbers are slightly better than what we've seen from Bijan Robinson. 27% targets per route run versus 20%. So we have to look at the fact that Breece didn't get to play a full down role early last season. Bijan pretty much was the passing down guy all of last year for the Falcons. The thing that fluctuated that we hope is fixed, which we think will be fixed, is the work on early downs and getting the carries inside the 5. So I think they're both right there. They're both electric players in both facets of the game.
I'm just, I have Breece as my RB3, which means I completely hate him and his entire family. That's just the way, ranking.
You probably have them one pick apart in your overall ranks, though.
Yep. I absolutely do. So you're right. But again, just trying to push the pedal a bit with that.
Yeah,
so final note here. I do hate some of the slander thrown Tyler Allgeier's way. I do think he's a good handcuff where he's going right now alongside guys like Kendre Miller, Antonio Gibson. Hey, guys, pull up Tyler Allgeier's rookie year numbers and put him next to Bijan Robinson, and you're going to see nearly identical advanced metrics. And honestly, Allgeier even outperformed him in a few things. So not last year. I'm not trying to say Allgeier is better than Bijan, but Tyler Allgeier is a good
handcuff. Is there really a better handcuff? I think he's in the argument for pure handcuff. Not a guy you're counting on to score fantasy points. He could have enough of a role that he still scores, but we're probably we're projecting him more as a full on backup. But if something happened in Atlanta, man, I was trying to think through that. I know you do the handcuff articles, one of my favorite things that you do. You do a lot of great stuff, but I love when you do the handcuff article every year. So where are you right now? Is there somebody? I know you haven't done it, but is there someone better than Tyler Allgeier, just straight up?
I remember last year it was Chuba and someone else it might have been Allgeier that were standing out to me as like really cheaper guys that could handle a 3-down role. I think Allgeier is going to be popping at least tier 2, man, if not tier 1. So, and also, man, I would argue that just the contingency upside where, Bijan has the potential to not maybe break fantasy football, but to be the overall RB1. So if you're on a team without him and you don't have Bijan on your roster, you want to set yourself up to take advantage of situations where Bijan doesn't do that. And in that case, Tyler Allgeier could be the one booming. So I'm with you, man. Tyler Allgeier, especially in that range, we talked about before, if you need a little bit more potential standalone value, someone like Chase Brown, Antonio Gibson probably have a better chance of giving that to you. But yeah, man, Tyler Allgeier, one injury away from probably being immediately in that RB1 conversation.
He would be.
Yeah.
If this offense does anything like what we think it's going to be, I would anticipate he's immediately in the running back 1 conversation if Bijan, which we would never want. He wins the lottery. Bijan Robinson wins the lottery, takes 3 weeks off. Tyler Allgeier would be a running back 1 for those 3 games.
Guys, we have reached the, most fun part of the preview. I think it's all fun, but we're gotten to the point where we go ahead and compare the football team to a TV or movie character. So I'm going to go with Rose's fiance from the Titanic, Dwain. The dude's wealthy. Marriage is going to help the family, upper class status. It's going to resolve all these problems. But are we positive that one guy is going to fix everything here? Maybe we're looking past some red flags. Maybe this guy tore his Achilles. Maybe he is 36 years old. Maybe, his confidence is shook after the team used number 8 overall pick on a backup quarterback. So maybe going a bit too far into the Vikings or into the Falcons because I have very little information other than what I said about Rose's fiance. But yeah, man, that's what I'm going with. So please tell me you have a better one.
Man, how much you hate a team that's won 7 games in each of the last 3 years with terrible quarterbacks. And now they get Kirk Cousins. It's at least an upgrade. Even if Kirk Cousins isn't what he used to be, he's going to be we can all agree, I think, unless you've lost your mind, that it's an upgrade over Desmond Ridder.
3+ wins, easy upgrade coming back from the Achilles.
Yeah, I mean, dude, they have elite young playmakers across the board. I think the market's sharp.
I think there's a chance. Sorry to cut you off. I think there's a chance though that Kirk Cousins has that noodle arm fall off. We saw it with Breeze. We saw it with Peyton. We see this with old quarterbacks. Not everyone is Brady, man.
But it's usually a gradual thing. It's not. I haven't seen it where it's just suddenly they show up the next year without an injury or something, and you're just completely gone. I know he did. But it's to his Achilles. I mean, I don't think it's as big of a deal as you make it. And if it is, I think you get Michael Penix, which is still going to be an upgrade over the guys that they've had. Is my thought process. But my character that I'm going with is Andy Dufresne from Shawshank Redemption. If you guys have not seen this, it is an absolute wonderful movie. Morgan Freeman is also in it. But the plot here is Andy Dufresne. He is wrongly accused of murdering his wife, and he has to go to prison. Okay. And eventually he's like, screw this. I'm an innocent man. He does his time. He does everything he can. He helps the warden out. You know, he runs the books, and he's hoping that eventually they're going to let him go because of his good behavior. He figures out they're not going to. So what does he have to do? He does what any natural man would. He builds a tunnel, and then he crawls through a bunch of shit to get out of this prison and escape and go to the beach. Well, that's Kyle Pitts, man. This is Kyle Pitts and Drake London. These guys have been wrongly accused of not being good fantasy assets. You now get Arthur Smith out of the way. You bring in a quarterback in Kirk Cousins, who's going to do way better than what Ian's saying. And these guys are going to be freed, Ian. They're going to be freed. They're going to be Andy Dufresne partying on the beach like there's no tomorrow. And you're going to love having them in your fantasy lineups.
I love when we agree, Dwayne, but I almost love more when we disagree a little bit here. So we've had some fun back and forth. We'll see what happens. You certainly, at a minimum, not going to give you, all the positional battle wins, but your movie character reference certainly top of mind there. But appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, you can also check out the written preview of this on FantasyLife.com. All of our ranks, projections, again, and so much more. Truly, guys, Fantasy Life Plus, we are grinding each and every day to give you guys the best product that money can buy. And honestly, like even the more expensive version, it costs less than a Chipotle burrito per month. So not trying to break the bank here, trying to hopefully win you guys a freaking ton of money in fantasy leagues of all shapes and sizes in 2024. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.